My name is Barbie Baca. It's January 10th, 2015. This is my music industry research project. I'm going to cover 4 topics. The first, rock is not dead. Second, the music industry is alive and well. Third, the rock god survives. And fourth, America needs music festivals. First one, rock is not dead. And like everything else, it is evolving. I think many fans of rock music, and even those who are young, covet the rock and roll scene of the 1970s, when bands went from playing clubs and bars to sports arenas. It was big, it was loud, it was in your face, and the 70s rock music became a business though, and has progressed this way. Now, just because it's a business doesn't mean that it's not rock and roll. And if you look back from one generation to the next, each decade has its own emerging rock artists and emerging rock genres. And it's growing and it's changing just like everything else. It's great to look and quote Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. He says bands are more genuine and more heartfelt than ever because they are in it for one reason, and the love of rock and roll. Why I think that rock is not dead is because it has a pulse. It has a pulse of people trying to keep it alive, and because they are in it for the love of music. The last 20 years has seen musicians dig even deeper to reinvent their sound and to keep their momentum alive. And they've realized, like all of us in any profession, to be successful, you have to work hard, you have to find your niche, and you have to push. And rock is only dead if you ignore it. By having interest in it and by thinking about it, it does not die. It has a life. Because you're paying attention to it, you're giving it life. And looking back over the last bunches of decades, we can look at the album sales from year to year. In the 70s, they were dominated by the singer-songwriters. The number one selling album of the 1970s was Simon & Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. In 1980, the number one selling album was Michael Jackson's Thriller. In 1990, Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill. The number one album in 2000, which is really interesting, was Radiohead's Kid A. And this totally rebuilt the face of rock and roll. Radiohead's Kid A is called a modern rock Beatles and said to be, quote, Rolling Stone, the rebuilding of rock itself. If rebuilding is being done, rock is not dead. The music industry still makes money. People like to talk about how there is no money in the music business, but there is. It's just enormously complicated. As a whole entity, the music industry makes money for a variety of people, from the songwriter, and this is not always the artist, to the performer, the record label, the distribution company, the artist manager, and when the artists are on tour, the venues and the sound production company, the tour manager, all the way down to the facility manager. The music industry, if it didn't exist, hundreds of thousands of people would be out of jobs. Now let's look at some actual numbers. In 2012, the industry saw a revenue increase of 0.3%, with a total revenue of $16.5 billion. Music is making money digitally, responsible for about 34% of all revenue globally. Spotify has paid over $500 million in royalties. Performance rights increased in 2014 by 9.2%, making up 6% of all revenue. More than 7,500 artists were signed to major label rosters in 2013, and 10,000 were signed to independent labels. Also, even on a local level, the music industry generates revenue. According to the website IFPI, quote, record companies invest in local talent and break them to a global audience. And then the recording industry is global in a scale and exports artists internationally, but heavily invests in local repertoire. In 12 of its leading markets, local repertoire accounts for more than 70% of the sales of the top 10 albums. The next point I'd like to hit on is the rock god is alive and well. Love them or hate them, they still exist. The original rock icon to me was Elvis Presley. While no one found Elvis ignorable, not everyone was a fan, and some people found him despicable. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, preachers and pundits declared him obscene and pronounced him responsible for all teenage hooliganism and juvenile delinquency. And to make my point, in 2015 we have artists that still have the same type of fame as Elvis. And I'd like to compare Elvis's fame to Eminem and Justin Bieber, because both of these artists have created their own notoriety of our day, much like Elvis. Elvis sold 134 million albums. Now today we have to compare these sales to digital album sales, because times have changed, but rock music and legends endure. According to our IAA, so Elvis sold his 134 million albums. Now digitally, Eminem has sold 31 million and Bieber has sold 25 million. And to put this into perspective, Elvis's albums have been selling since 1954, while Eminem released his first album in 1994 and Bieber in 2009. And by their deaths, who knows what their sales and notoriety will reach. My fourth and final topic is America needs music festivals. Now while we have our array of festivals, Sturgis, Rock and Country USA, Summerfest, Electric Daisy Carnival, and Coachella to name a few, we have not quite caught on like the global stage has. Now the #1 music festival in the world, according to MTV News, is, I can't pronounce it right, Fest in Vienna, Austria. 3.2 million people attended this festival in 2013. They had 2,000 plus acts on 21 stages, and they did this in only 3 days, and it's in its 30th year of production. I kind of wonder if we as Americans just don't have the attention span to prolong a festival for so many years, but I do think it's something we need to work on. Summerfest in Wisconsin is the only close match to the Vienna Festival, with 800,000 in attendance in 2013. The Electric Daisy Carnival kind of pulls in at a close second in Las Vegas. In 2014, it had 320,000 people. But festivals in Hungary, Poland, Brazil still bring in millions of people in just a short amount of days. I feel that with our easily accessible production company and our array of amazing musicians in the United States, we should be able to pull off the biggest festival ever seen, and we should be able to keep it going for years to come.